How do you keep the family cabin inside the family? I'm Michael Redden, and this is the topic we're going to be talking about today. If you have any questions or comments about it, please leave them in the comments below. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, if you want to plan with me, please go to reddenlawoffice.com, click on Schedule a Meeting. So this is a very common question that I get quite a bit. You know, we've got the family farm, we've got the family cabin, we've got this piece of real estate or this other property that I really want to keep in the family forever. And I really want it to have its own special treatment, not put in these other trusts with these other things. Well, there's a way we can do that. A lot of times we'll call them things like cabin trusts or these other things. But essentially what they are is a trust that's intended to live forever, that's going to take care of one asset and provide the benefit of that asset to the rest of the family. So what you can do is you can put that in the trust. It's going to be irrevocable. So once it's in there, it's done. You don't want it to be revocable or come out in things, because then someone can undo it, things can happen, creditors can come up, and it defeats the purpose. The next thing you want to think about is, do I want this to be a trust in Minnesota, or do I want this to be a trust in a different state? Minnesota trusts, by their default, as they're normally written, don't last forever. There are some legal tricks and things we can do that will turn a trust and make it end and start an exact new one and go forward, but they're a little bit more complicated. If you want that trust to last forever, then you probably want to make it something like in Nevada or South Dakota and just kind of deal with those things. And so that's really the first thing you should know, is that if you want the trust to last forever, it can be done in Minnesota, and I've done them and they can work well, but they're a little bit more complicated. So you might want to first start thinking, I've got to do something outside of this state, and you're going to want a special trustee and things for that. And usually two really good states for that are South Dakota and Nevada. Doesn't mean that that adds a lot of big more complexity to it. Just means that's where the trust will be, because it can last forever, and they'll still file all their tax returns. You'll still get to know these people, still talk to them. It also doesn't mean that one of your family members can't be the one put in charge of administering the property and things. Just the trust books and things would be someplace else, so you can have that long time. Otherwise, it'll run really well from the day to day, but then when this irrevocable trust comes up on when it has to end in Minnesota law, there's other things that might need to happen. There could be other problems. There could be legal fees. So it's usually better to put that in the other state. Putting it in the other state is going to have a little bit more cost, because you got to pay that trustee. But then you can talk about how you want that to be used. You can say my family members can agree upon a schedule that goes through. If they can't agree, then here's a default schedule. You can do these kinds of things to talk about how the asset gets used. The bigger question then starts to become, how are we going to take care of the cabin? It's got property tax. It's going to need to have repairs done. It's going to need to have upkeep. It's got insurance. It's got utility bills and things like that. And you don't really want the family members from then on to have to really contribute a lot inside of it. So what we generally do is we'll say, hey, you're going to have to leave a large chunk of money along with the cabin over there. And if you've got that money, great. You just put that money in there and deal with it that way. If you don't have that kind of money just in your estate, then you're going to put a life insurance policy inside this thing. So when the life insurance policy will happen, when you pass away, the trust gets some money. That money gets invested. That money's used for the repairs. That money's used for the utilities, the property tax, and things like that. And that'll probably be good for a lot of most people. There's always the last resort of the trust can take out a mortgage if it's got other assets. You don't want to get too complicated with it, but you need to make sure you handle who's going to make decisions about the schedule and how these things go, because after your grandkids take over and then their children come up in there, there's not going to be as much of a connection. You don't know who those people are going to be, if they're going to get along. You don't know how many of them they're going to be. There could be 30 of them, and then they've got to talk about how they're going to share this thing and how they're going to use it. And maybe you don't want it to go that long. That's something you need to think about too, how it gets sold maybe on that fourth generation. But you need to have someone there who's going to be responsible for that sale, handling these kinds of arguments, handling these kinds of agreements, handling that schedule. Who's going to be responsible for noticing there was going to be a repair? Because lots of times the trustee sometimes won't see it every day, won't see it as often as you like, but the family will. So who's going to let the trustee know so they can get those things? And then where's the money going to come from? You either need to leave enough that's invested properly, or you need to have a life insurance policy that's going to spill some money in there, and then that needs to be invested properly, because the longer we go, the more repairs come up. We don't want that money to run out. And if you do this, it'll be protected from anybody's divorce, anybody's creditors, and it can last as long as there's money inside of it, and as long as the family wants to keep the property. And you get to decide that when you first make the trust. You can say forever, or you can say, hey, if the majority of family members decide we no longer want this, they can sell it. Any of those kinds of things that are your wishes can be put in this document. And that's how you make sure that the family cabin, the family farm, any of that stuff stays in the family. If you have any questions or concerns about this, please leave them below. If you want to plan with me, go to reddenlawoffice.com and click on Schedule a Meeting.